If suffering makes you stronger, why do the weak stay broken? They say pain builds character, that fire refines, that what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. But look around. If that were true, why do so many stay shattered? Why do some carry pain like a weapon while others rot in it? Nietzsche saw through the lie. He didn't romanticize suffering, he studied it like a surgeon studies rot. Not all pain transforms, some pain festers, some becomes a cage. You've seen it. Some people walk out of the fire with eyes like steel. Others never leave, not because they can't, but because they make their pain their identity. They believe they are the wound, and so they wait. They wait for the storm to stop, for the world to ease up, for someone to save them. But the storm wasn't sent to save you, it was sent to reveal you. The strong don't suffer less. They suffer differently. They turn agony into action. They give pain a shape, a direction. They use it like iron uses fire to be forged. But the weak, they sit, they numb, they repeat, because facing pain takes will, and will is the first thing they surrender. Pain is inevitable. Weakness is refusing to rise through it. That's why the pain won't go away, because it isn't finished. It hasn't seen what you're going to do yet. And if you wait long enough, if you stay passive long enough, you won't just feel the pain, you'll become it. They call it kindness, they call it compassion, they call it moral strength. But Nietzsche called it camouflage. The world has dressed weakness in gold. It gives standing ovations to victimhood. It calls surrender virtue and fear humility. But look closer. This isn't about healing. It's about hiding. People wear their suffering like medals, not because they've overcome anything, but because they want their wounds to excuse their refusal to grow. They made their pain a pedestal because they could not rise. This is the heart of resentment, a poison Nietzsche saw everywhere. The weak can't become the strong, so they flip the script. Strength becomes cruelty, power becomes evil, and pain becomes proof of goodness. But that's not morality. That's envy with a halo. We don't challenge people to rise, we reward them for staying low. We don't uplift strength, we shame it. Call it privilege, call it toxic, call it unfair. So the broken stay broken, not because they must, but because the world tells them that staying broken is beautiful. Nietzsche didn't buy it, and neither should you. Do not mistake glorified stagnation for wisdom. The world will praise your weakness because it fears your strength. They smile, they forgive, they speak in soft tones and polished manners, but behind that softness is a festering rage. Nietzsche named it with surgical precision, resentiment, the resentment of the weak toward the strong, disguised as morality. It's not just envy, it's revenge in slow motion. Because they can't overpower you, they redefine the game. They call your courage oppression, your will selfish, your discipline arrogance. I can't win, they whisper, so I'll change the rules. Resentment is the rot that grows when you bury failure and pretend it's virtue. It's the moral code of the bitter, a philosophy not of rising, but of pulling others down. And the longer they suffer, the more they believe they deserve reward. Not because they've overcome, but because they've endured. But Nietzsche saw the trap. They suffer longer, not deeper, because they refuse to transform the pain. They use it as a shield. This rot spreads quietly. It infects institutions, language, culture, until we stop honoring those who rise and start worshipping those who only survived. Resentment doesn't build, it deconstructs. It rewrites nobility as guilt and turns strength into something shameful. And all the while, the rot smiles. We think morality was handed down from heaven, from prophets, from truth itself. But Nietzsche saw a darker origin. He said morality was not received, it was invented by the weak for survival. When they couldn't fight the strong, they declared strength evil. When they couldn't rise in power, they made submission a virtue. They could not conquer fire, so they called it sin. This is slave morality, a value system built by the powerless to protect themselves from reality. They turned pain into proof of goodness. They crowned the victim. They sanctified the wound. And over time, we all drank from that cup. We started believing that obedience was moral, that softness was holy, that passivity was noble. But Nietzsche asked the question no one dared to. What if your morals are just your fears wearing robes? What if you don't hate cruelty, you just hate courage? What if you don't love kindness, you just want the world to kneel? Slave morality doesn't lift people. It clips wings, it sanctifies comfort, and curses those who climb higher. It trains lions to purr, and tells them they're good. But good for what? They crowned their pain because they could not crown their strength. The strong suffer too, but their pain doesn't rot, it refines. They don't wear their wounds like trophies. They use them like tools. While the weak seek escape, the strong seek exposure. They don't flinch. They don't wait. They step into the fire and let it forge them. Suffering is fuel, not fate. Nietzsche didn't glorify suffering. He revered those who could wield it. The strong don't cry out for fairness. They don't trade agony for pity. They take the raw materials of pain and build a new self. They break, but they break forward, because pain is not the enemy. Stagnation is. And while the world teaches you to numb, to pause, to seek comfort, the strong do the opposite. They embrace discomfort like a forge. They choose the harder path on purpose. Not because they enjoy pain, but because they understand that transformation hurts. What the weak call suffering, the strong call a beginning. This is the difference Nietzsche made clear. The weak resist pain and remain in it. The strong absorb pain and rise from it, not by accident, not by miracle, but by will. They say guilt is a conscience, a moral compass, a sign of goodness. Nietzsche called it something else, a tool, a way to control the strong from the inside out. When brute force failed, the weak turned to something sharper, shame. They couldn't beat lions, so they taught lions to hate their claws. You're selfish. You're dangerous. You should feel guilty for being powerful. And it worked. Guilt became a leash. Not because it brought wisdom, but because it brought obedience. Nietzsche saw this clearly. He traced it back to religion, to society, to every institution that needed you to be tame. The message was always the same: don't rise too far, don't speak too loud, don't want too much. They call it humility, but it's fear disguised as virtue, and guilt is the whip they use to keep you bowed. True guilt is not moral. It is manufactured by those who fear your freedom. You felt it. The moment you stepped into your own will, the pressure came. Who do you think you are? But that's the point. Guilt isn't your guide, it's their voice, echoing in your mind, trying to keep you small. The strong see through it. They don't ask permission to become. They look content, safe, normal. But Nietzsche saw what they truly were: trapped. The herd doesn't seek truth, it seeks security. Soft routines, predictable pleasures, a world without risk. And in that comfort, the soul begins to die. They say they want peace. But what they really want is to be untouched, unchallenged, unshaken, unchanged. They confuse sedation for salvation. Nietzsche never trusted the crowd, not because he hated people, but because he saw how quickly they trade freedom for approval. The herd doesn't ask questions. It obeys, it adapts, it shrinks itself to fit in. And when someone rises, when someone dares to become, the herd doesn't cheer. It panics. You're selfish. You're different. You think you're better? No, you don't think you're better. You think you're becoming. And that threatens them, because deep down they know they've chosen the cage, not the kind made of bars, but the kind built from comfort, excuses, and applause. Nietzsche's warning still echoes. The crowd will call your stillness wisdom, but it's just fear dressed as contentment. The herd survives, but it does not evolve, and if you stay among them too long, neither will you. The strong say, "This is mine, I will carry it." The weak say, "It's not my fault." That's the difference, not in pain, not in failure, but in ownership. Nietzsche saw it like X-ray vision. The weak avoid responsibility not because they can't handle it, but because they fear what it demands. Responsibility means choice, and choice means power, and power means blame when things fall apart. So they retreat. They hand their lives to systems, to others, to fate. They call it peace, but it's a cage they've locked themselves in. Because if you're always the victim, then you're never required to change. You're never expected to rise. You're only expected to survive. And that becomes their truth. I suffer, therefore I am innocent. But suffering is not innocence. Suffering without growth is avoidance. You've heard it. I can't help it. I'm just wired this way. The world's unfair. This is just who I am. No, that's not identity, that's abdication. The strong don't pretend they're perfect. They just refuse to be passive. They rise, not because they were chosen, but because they chose. Responsibility is sacred. It is the altar where strength is born. The weak avoid that altar. The strong kneel before it and emerge forged. Pain is a fact, but power is a decision. Nietzsche didn't say avoid pain. He said forge with it, because pain by itself means nothing. It only becomes transformation when you give it direction. The weak resist it. They try to escape. They numb it, blame it, wear it. But the strong, they step into it, not to suffer, but to shape it. Every wound is a forge, every ache a blueprint. This is the turning point. Where most people fold, the strong focus. Where most people freeze, the strong forge. Because they know pain is not the end. It's the raw material of becoming. The pain that breaks you is the same pain that can build you, but only if you hold the hammer, only if you stay in the fire long enough to change shape. And no one can do that for you. Not a teacher, not a savior, not a system. It's you alone against the flame. Suffering is not the proof you've been wronged. It's the invitation to rise. The weak reject that invitation. They want relief, not rebirth. But Nietzsche's voice remains. Use your pain or be used by it. That choice is yours and no one else's. At the center of Nietzsche's philosophy is a fire no one wants to touch. Will. Not will to survive, not will to obey, but the will to power. Not over others, but over yourself. This is the force that shapes the world. That transforms pain. That creates values. That builds futures from broken ground. And yet, most people run from it. Because the will to power demands responsibility. It demands discipline. It demands that you stand naked before your life and say, I will shape this. The weak reject that. They wait, they blame, they obey, and in doing so, they abandon their birthright. Victimhood is not weakness, it's the rejection of will. Nietzsche saw this clearly. Most people don't suffer because life is cruel. They suffer because they've refused to choose, and they think the will to power means domination, but it doesn't. It means becoming the sculptor of your own soul, even when the clay is broken, even when the tools are few, even when no one believes in the form you're trying to create. The weak wait to be saved, the strong will themselves into new life. That is what the will to power really is. Not ego, not aggression, but the sacred defiance of choosing to become. They'll call it heartless, cold, cruel. But Nietzsche didn't reject pity because he lacked compassion. He rejected it because he saw what it really does. Pity freezes people in their wounds. It says, yeah, you are fragile. Let me protect your suffering. But in protecting it, it preserves it. It makes the wound sacred and the victim untouchable. Nietzsche wanted something greater, transformation. And transformation is violent, not to others, but to the self. Don't feed the wound, he said. Feed the fire. Because pity doesn't uplift. It traps. It rewards the passive. It soothes the stagnant. You've seen it. A society that elevates pain but fears power, that honors victimhood but mocks strength. Why? Because strength forces reflection. It threatens the herd. It dares to say, you don't need rescue. You need to rise. Nietzsche's rejection of pity wasn't rejection of the weak. It was rejection of the illusion that weakness is permanent. True compassion isn't soft. It's demanding. It says, I see your suffering. Now stand. The world may offer you comfort, but comfort won't evolve you. Nietzsche offered a challenge, transform, or repeat. The weak wanted pity, but the strong wanted truth. And the truth is this: no one climbs while being cradled. We live in the softest age in history. And yet, suffering hasn't vanished. It's just changed shape. Now it hides in scrolls, in dopamine loops, in carefully curated escapes. We don't wrestle lions, we wrestle emptiness. And still we wonder why we feel weak. Nietzsche never saw our world, but he predicted it. He saw what happens when a culture trades pain for comfort, challenge for safety, becoming for distraction. In numbing pain, they erased meaning. Now we validate stagnation. We call exhaustion self-care. We call quitting boundaries. We call weakness trauma. And worst of all, we build systems to protect people from their own evolution. Comfort has become the god, and suffering the enemy. But Nietzsche flipped that. He didn't fear pain. He feared a life too dull to awaken anything sacred. Because when everything is easy, nothing is earned. When nothing is earned, nothing transforms. A life without resistance is a life without revelation. This is the new suffering, not the sharp pain of hardship, but the slow ache of meaninglessness. And the only way out is back through the fire. Not to punish yourself, not to prove anything, but to remember who you are when comfort is stripped away and only your will remains. Nietzsche didn't just tear down illusions, he offered a path forward, a figure not of comfort but of becoming, the overman, not a hero, not a savior, but the one who suffers, shatters, and chooses to rise anyway. He doesn't ask for pity, he doesn't demand applause, he walks through the chaos and turns it into clarity. The overman doesn't float above pain, he dives into it and rebuilds himself. He is forged, not born, formed by fire, sharpened by solitude, made whole by will. While the herd avoids the void, he steps into it. While the weak cling to identity, he breaks and remakes his, because he knows there is no final self. Only the next one, and the next one, if you dare. You are not meant to be safe. You are meant to become. The overman does not seek peace. He seeks power over himself. He does not seek approval. He seeks alignment with something higher. He is not loved by the crowd. He is feared, misunderstood, alone. But he does not shrink, because he knows the truth. That meaning is not found. It is forged in the fire by your hands. Most people think weakness is something you're born with, a flaw, a curse, a fate. But Nietzsche saw the truth. Weakness is practiced. You repeat it, you rehearse it, you choose it again and again until it feels like who you are. But it's not. It's a habit, one built in silence, one shaped by fear. You are not weak. You are untrained in strength. Every time you avoid pain, you reinforce weakness. Every time you escape discomfort, you deepen dependence, not because you can't handle more, but because you refuse to try. Excuses are not flaws, they are decisions, and every excuse you make is a quiet act of surrender. They say, I'm just like this, but what they mean is, I've stopped becoming. Weakness isn't a diagnosis, it's a pattern. And like all patterns, it can be broken, but not by wishing, not by waiting, not by hoping someone comes to lift you, only by choosing to respond differently, choosing to act with force, choosing to move when stillness feels safest. Nietzsche didn't condemn weakness, he condemned the lie that it cannot be changed, because in every moment you are rehearsing something, strength or surrender. Excuses don't sound dangerous, they sound reasonable, comforting, safe. But Nietzsche saw them for what they are, chains. Every excuse you speak wraps tighter around your will, not once, but every time you repeat it. I'm tired. It's not the right time. I'll start when things calm down. This is just how I am. No, this is how you become caged, because every excuse is a seed, and every seed, if watered, grows into limitation. The weak don't wear shackles on their wrists, they wear them in their words. And they ask why nothing changes, Woody, while defending the very beliefs that keep them bound. They want sympathy for chains they chose. Excuses aren't about reality. They're about permission. Permission to shrink, to wait, to remain. But there is no strength in justifying stagnation. Your pain is real, but your permission to stay in it, that's the choice. The strong know this. That's why they guard their words, why they destroy the narrative that weakness is fixed. Because every sentence you speak is either a hammer or a shackle. Your values must come from strength, not shelter. Speak like someone building a future, not someone defending a cage. You want to evolve, to become something new, then prepare to bleed. Because real transformation doesn't feel like growth, it feels like death. Nietzsche understood this. He didn't sugarcoat the process. He didn't promise light, only fire. Becoming is violent, because something in you must die. Your old self, the one built on fear, on excuses, on waiting, does not want to leave quietly. It will fight, it will scream, it will tempt you back into safety. And you will be tempted because becoming isn't a breakthrough, it's a breaking, a tearing, a shedding, a sacred dismembering of the self you no longer need. That's why the weak avoid it. They want change to be soft, comfortable, palatable. But Nietzsche saw the truth. You cannot be reborn without a funeral. The strong accept this violence. They know it's not cruelty, it's consecration. The pain is not there to punish, it's there to purify, because to rise, you must be stripped of who you were, of what you clung to, of the lies you called truth. And when you finally stand raw, burning, reborn, you'll realize the violence wasn't against you, it was for you. Becoming isn't pretty, but it is holy. Pain is not what destroys you, waiting is. Pain wakes you up, it forces your hand, it strips the illusion of safety and dares you to become. But most don't. They suffer and stay the same. They ache and do nothing, not because they're cursed, but because they're passive. Nietzsche never said suffering was noble. He said it was necessary if you rise through it. The strong suffer and rise. The weak suffer and wait. That's the split, not between the blessed and the broken, but between the ones who move and the ones who rot. Because pain is a test. And if you answer it with action, you evolve. If you answer it with excuses, you decay. It doesn't matter how long you've hurt. It matters what you've done with it. Stagnation is the true enemy, because it disguises itself as patience, as healing, as rest.
but inside it's just fear, frozen into a lifetime. They waited for the pain to go away. The strong made it a furnace. And that's the final truth. Not all suffering leads to strength, only the suffering that is transformed. So ask yourself now, are you still waiting or are you becoming? Because the pain won't stop, but neither will you if you decide to rise.